Welcome to episode 358 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always, and this week we've got a fun one because Russell Allen is here. Russell Allen, one of the greatest heavy metal vocalists of the 21st century. Like you can say that because since the year 2000, if you're putting together a list of the greatest heavy metal vocalists of the past 20-25 years, you've got to include Russell Allen. I mean, I guess you don't have to, but then you're just a dumbass. I'll say it. Russell Allen, the vocalist of Symphony X. Of course, Adrenaline Mob. He's been a part of Trans-Siberian Orchestra. He did a few albums with Alan Lande, and then, of course, now he's got the same project continuing. But it's Alan Olsen with Annette Olsen, of course, of Nightwish fame. So just great music that this man has pumped out over the past 25 plus years. He also has a great solo album that came out it's probably been 15 years ago now. I should have looked up the date. But if you've never heard that, check it out because it's not metal. It's more of a hard rock tinge. It's got a little bit of grooviness, a little bit of swampiness to it, so check that one out if you haven't. But all kinds of great stuff from Russell Allen. We're going to talk about a lot of that here with him just coming up here in just a bit. I've also got a couple shows I'm going to talk about that I saw recently. I've been out of action here on the podcast for a couple weeks. Had Rocklahoma, which that went well, as it always does. Had some fun times there. Got to see a couple of the bands, but of course I was working, so I didn't get to see everything that I wanted to like I used to do when I was out there. And then the week after that, I was at Blue Ridge Rock Fest. And that one was quite an experience. I know that many people know the issues that happened at Blue Ridge in 2021. And I was kind of apprehensive about ever wanting to work that festival after that. But then this year rolled around and I was asked to work it by a good friend of mine who has been in this business way longer than me. They had a lot of new people in, new teams entirely on the different departments. And I know there were still some issues, as far as shuttling goes and all that. But overall, I believe the experience, I can't speak from a fan standpoint, but from what I saw and what I heard from a lot of people, outside of the small issues, well, I know having to wait in line for a long time is not a small issue, but outside of those issues, it was way better than it was in the years past. So I was glad to be a part of that. And I have tons of stories from that, from the job I was doing, because I was a part of artist relations, but that's probably not something I'm going to speak about here. I've kind of made that a habit throughout the years that I've been working live events. It'd be great to spill the beans on a lot of this stuff, just some of the conversations or things you see or hear or whatever, but we try to keep this professional here, right? But anyway, some cool stuff came out of that. One of the bands I worked with at Blue Ridge was Hellstorm, and I just recorded an interview with RJ Hill, the drummer of Hellstorm, today. If you're hearing this when it comes out, I'm putting this out on a Friday. I know I usually don't put stuff out on Friday, but this week's been a little hectic, so I'm getting this out late in the week. But so just yesterday, I recorded an interview with RJ Hill. Man, that guy, super personable, super outgoing, easy to talk to, and doing the interview was no different. It was over an hour long. And to get an hour-long interview with someone that's out on tour is pretty rare. Because I got a ton of stuff going on. A million moving pieces. But RJ sat down with me on Zoom and talked for over an hour. So that one's going to be coming up here in just a week or two. I've also got ones coming up with, I'm drawing a blank already. I'll think of it here before later on. I've got one coming up with Kenneth Bryan of the Kenneth Bryan Band. This dude's amazing. If you have not heard of him, look for that one. I know I've got something else recording that I'm drawing a blank, but I've also got 2 or 3 things that are scheduled to happen in the next couple weeks that are all going to be great. So as soon as those happen, I'll let you know about those here. But before we jump into the rest of this episode, I need to let you know who I'm sponsored by. And speaking of Rocklahoma, my longest running and oldest sponsor is DEB Concerts. Promoter based right here in Tulsa, has brought tons of great acts to this area. The Metal Tour of the Year, Megadeth and Lamb of God, was here earlier in the year. DEB Concerts brought Poison in an off date from the stadium tour. They played the BOK Center here, along with Tom Kiefer of Cinderella and LA Guns. And then throughout the years, just tons of great acts like Last in Line, Saxon, Warrant, Lita Ford. The list is long. They book the Roadhouse stage every year at Rocklahoma, and this year was no different, and all that was excellent. DEBconcerts.com. Follow them on the socials, Facebook and Twitter, DEB Concerts, to be kept up to date on future announcements. And of course, I'll let you know right here when there's future announcements. We've also got MedPharm, a dispensary located in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, 24683 East Highway 51. They're right off the highway. Great thing about MedPharm is they're open super late, and they have a drive-thru. Most dispensaries don't offer a drive-thru. You can call in, you can even text in your order, and then all you got to do is run through that drive-thru and be right on your way. But if you want to go inside and check it out, you can do that as well. You can hit up leafly.com to see their entire selection before you go in. They've got a huge selection. Follow them on their socials. MedPharm, that's PHARM on Facebook. Instagram is MedPharmOK. The website is medpharmok.com. They're always running specials on their socials. And one of the specials that is always running is if you mention Thunder Underground, they'll give you 10% off your first order, which is very cool. On top of all this, they're Cannabis with a Cause. 30% of the proceeds go to build no-kill animal shelters. This is an amazing thing. Most businesses don't give nearly a third of their profits at all times to anything, let alone something that's this needed. I know in this area, especially, and I'm sure it is in most areas. So if you're in the Tulsa area, I know there's dispensaries everywhere, but it's worth your time to hit up MedPharm so you can help animals as well as help yourself. So hit up MedPharm and tell them you heard about him here. We've also got Sunset Tattoo, a tattoo shop located in Midtown Tulsa. Their tattoos are done good and proper. They're state licensed, and they are mother approved. 25 plus years of experience. You can check out Facebook and Instagram are both Sunset Tattoo Tulsa. Tons of photos on there. You can see all the different styles of work that Jake is great at. Whatever you need done, this man can get it done for you. Give him a call, shoot him a message, set up a time to get in there and talk about what work you want to have done, or just drop in. He accepts walk-ins. Whatever you've been thinking about, this man can make it come to life. I got a tattoo from him last year that I had been thinking about for years. A cover-up that I'd been wanting to do, and I finally kind of designed what I wanted, took it in there to him. He added some of his own touches, and I absolutely love it. So hit up Sunset Tattoo and tell him you heard about him on Thunder Underground. All right. So before we get into this Russell Allen interview, some other metal we need to talk about is a couple shows that I saw recently. Last week, Haunt made their way to Tulsa for the first time. And I believe it might have been the first time ever in Oklahoma. I know they were scheduled for Oklahoma City, but that ended up getting canceled. And I think, anyway, when we walked in the door, I went with Jason, who used to do this podcast with me, as many of you will remember. We both, whenever Jason was still this podcast, we had Trevor on here 2 different times. Both excellent interviews, so check those out if you have not. We walked in the door at the Whittier Bar in Tulsa, and Trevor was sitting there on the stage. Walked right over to him, introduced ourselves. He was very gracious, stood up, hugged us, said, "It's great to finally meet you guys." I also thought it was funny because he pointed out, he said, "I appreciate you introducing yourself in a way that makes sense to me," because I'm sure, guys, any guy in a band Probably gets dudes all the time walking up to him, hey, I talked to you on Facebook, or some bullshit that a million people have done. But I just led straight with, hey, Thunder Underground podcast, you've been on a couple times. So, great to finally meet Trevor. And he mentioned that it was his first time in Oklahoma. And I said I thought he'd played OKC. And he said he might have in like 2018. So, there you go. That was the whole long-winded way to tell you that finally Haunt was in Oklahoma. Not only that, man, this was a touring triple bill, and it was actually a 4-band bill, because Blind Oath out of Tulsa, Oklahoma was on this bill. And the touring package, along with Haunt, featured Seven Sisters out of London and Entranced, a brand new band that, holy shit, I'm going to get into that in a second. So being a big Haunt fan, this has been something that I've been like, we've got to see this band live eventually, some point. I know me and Jason tried to go down to the, we were planning this past year to go down to the Hell's Heroes show. It happens every year in South Texas. We didn't make it happen. It's happening again next year, but I don't think Haunt is on the lineup next year. But anyway, it's a killer lineup. Look that thing up. Haunt has put out their most recent album that came out in July, I believe, was their 7th album. 7th full-length album. And we're talking the span of 4 or 5 years. I guess I should have, looked my dates up so I didn't say I guess. But I think it was 2017 or 2018 maybe when the first album came out. So just think about that. That's something that is unheard of in this era of music. The majority of, our adult lives, that's kind of unheard of. This is something that happened in the 70s, and into the early 80s at the most. But, because they, record labels want bands to pump out, a new album every 6 months. And Trevor's kind of just doing that. And he said on the podcast last time he was on, his goal was to have 20 albums. And at the rate he's going, that shouldn't be too hard. I know he recently posted on Facebook that he was already working on the next one. And the last one just came out in July. Last time he was on the podcast, it was right after an album had come out. And he said he's already focusing on the next one. So, that's just, if you're a fan of this kind of music, which you should be, this is just like you're living in an amazing era of music. Whenever bands are, not when I say bands, there's not very many, but when a band like Haunt is giving you this much content, and on top of that, it's not just like, oh, here's 12 songs I wrote last week. Hopefully some of them stick. This guy isn't like that. This guy's a songwriter. And you can listen to an album and you don't need to skip around. And that's just unbelievable. There's bands that I've always say that about, like Evergrey, Seven Dust, where, I could pop on any album throughout their career and just let it go. Hit random shuffle on the entire discography and not be like, well, screw that song. Haunt is the same way. And to see them live, I'm just jumping straight to them. They're the, the headliner of this tour, but talking about it. So, just full on, phenomenal. I know that Trevor's had some lineup changes throughout the years in Haunt. And the 3 guys he has with him now, they brought it. And he brought it. It was just full on onslaught. And just to see, the crowd reaction and to see the other band's reaction. This was the official final night of the tour, I believe. I know it was Entranced final night. On the tour, I think Seven Sisters and Haunt were doing a couple more shows, but it was the official final night of the triple bill. And just to see all the bands interacting with each other, the guys from Entranced, were down there, not just like you see, sometimes you see an opening band, appreciating the headliner from the crowd or the side of the stage. Entranced was right there in front of the stage, headbanging and fist pumping with every fan in there. And then they even jumped on stage a couple times. I know that James Luna grabbed the mic and sang along. I think the drummer of Entrance did as well. Maybe it was during the burst into flame, I think, but don't quote me on that. But it's just amazing to see that, to me, to see the passion that these guys have for music, and to see Haunt bring this live. Whenever you've got that big of a catalog, and they drew songs from the entire catalog. I think there might have been 2 songs off the newest album. I think Mind Freeze had maybe 3 tracks, and then the other albums, they hit at least 1 song off them, I think. But it was just a killer, a straightforward, like 10, 11 song set, just pounded through it. And, you got everything. I feel like I'm using the same adjectives, but the power that they brought, Trevor's vocals, they're very distinctive. And in live, they even got a bit more of a heaviness to them. But that also could have been just like, we're in a very small space, it's not a big bar, it's a small bar, But, with the crowd in there, it filled up the place. And the crowd was there, and they were on it. It was a Tuesday night in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And the crowd was acting like, this was Saturday night in fucking Chicago with 50,000 people. It was a great time, and I enjoyed that. And to see the other bands on the bill get the same reaction. Seven Sisters out of London. I mean, this band is, a band I'm admittedly new to. I'd heard like one song prior to the show, and I dug it. I should have delved more into it, but then after seeing them live, of course I did. This band has a real intricacy to their music, the musicianship. It's very, I said intricate, but I know there's an obvious word I'm looking for, but the point is, you think of a progressive band like Dream Theater or something, and everything that goes into like one song. I get that same sense from Seven Sisters, even though they don't sound anything like Dream Theater. They might have some progressive tendencies at times. They've got, huge guitar lines and tempo changes and, soaring, these guitar solos are, knock you on your ass. Great vocals. I mean, this is just a great band all the way around. It's got a very, traditional heavy metal sound. It's just a band you need to check out if you have not. And Entranced is the same way. James Luna from Holy Grail. Phenomenal fucking band. He has a new band that you can use those exact same words about. Phenomenal fucking band. They have an EP that just came out. Literally, I saw him last Tuesday. This came out Friday. So this EP's been out now a week by the time you're hearing this. So check it out. It's got 5 tracks on it. Just straight up old school heavy metal but it doesn't sound dated. It still feels fresh. And, James Luna is one of those guys that's just been fucking doing it for years and has always flown under the radar, to your casual metal fan. Between this and Holy Grail, hopefully people start, taking notice. And this band just absolutely slammed through these songs, and they've got the track called Dream Lover, which is a bit more, melodic tinged than a couple of the tracks are, but they all have that great melody to them, that great old school metal sound. And I read on their bio, like after the fact, it said that they consider themselves the Latin new wave of British heavy metal, I think is how they worded it. Regardless, check out Entranced, that's with an I. All one word, Entranced, ED. And they mentioned at the show, we're big fans of the Scorpions, if you couldn't tell from our name. And the Scorpions played in Tulsa the very next night. How convenient was that? But we're not there yet, because Blind Oath closed out this show. Blind Oath, I've spoken about them here on this podcast before. Jason and I both did, because we had seen them live in the past. Seeing them live again is great. This is the first time I've seen them since the pandemic. And this band is just, this is what a scene like Tulsa needs. I mean, Tulsa always, in my opinion, has always had a good music scene because it's so diverse. You've got metal bands, you've got rock bands, you've of course got, country and Americana, you've got blues, you've got some great rap artists in this area too. It's just a great conglomerate of different styles of music, which you could say that about any city, but Tulsa just seems to be more evident to me than a place like Oklahoma City or something else that I'm familiar with. But Blind Oath, every time I've seen them, you can tell they bring a crowd with them. Because that's the other thing. You'll see at a show a lot of times, like this show, for instance, Haunt was the headliner. But the way the bill was set up, Haunt went on a little earlier. So they got that prime spot, and then Blind Oath as the local support went on at the end. And sometimes when that happens, you lose the crowd because they're like, well, we saw the main band we came to see, and they start to filter out. Blind Oath, that didn't happen. The crowd was into it, and Blind Oath, brought something different to the show because Blind Oath has the musicianship and the musical style that fits well with these other three bands. But vocally, Blind Oath is much more aggressive than these other three bands because the other three bands have, your more traditional metal vocal styles. With Blind Oath, it's more the modern, heaviness, the gruffness, and that's what I love about Blind Oath is they put that on top of this old school metal sound. It's like part thrashy, part traditional metal, part everything. They combine a lot of elements and they just slam it straight through, and the crowd loves it. I love it. This is just one of those bands that you have to see live to truly appreciate. And I know earlier this year, they were out in California. I know doing some stuff with our buddies at Night Demon. So hopefully we'll hear more about that coming soon. But absolutely, check out Blind Oath. These guys are killer Tulsa band. And then like I mentioned earlier, the next night Scorpions were in town. Absolutely could not miss this because it's the Scorpions. I mean, come on. This is the only... Scorpions were like one of the main two bands on my bucket list for a lot of my adult life. It was like them and Tom Petty and Glenn Hughes and Lenny Kravitz. Okay. And I finally saw Tom Petty and Scorpions for the first time around the same time, probably like 10 years ago. Well, no, I saw Scorpions for the first time in 2010, and then Tom Petty was a year or two after that, I think. But getting sidetracked, I saw Glenn Hughes live for the first time, I don't know why I didn't mention this, at Blue Ridge Rock Fest. It was one of the greatest moments of my life. I'll just say it right here. I've had that man on the podcast before. It was an unbelievable honor. And to be able to stand side of the stage and watch him sing Deep Purple's Burn, I don't know where you go from that as a fan of watching music. I say I don't know where I go, but I just talked about where I went, which was Haunt and then Scorpions. So anyway, this is only the third time I've seen Scorpions. And it is the first time I saw them at their own show as a headliner. I mean, the other times I saw them was as a headliner, but it was at festivals. Rock in America in Oklahoma City back in like 2010, and then Rocklahoma, and I believe it was 2017 maybe. So once again, the Scorpions have a new album called Rock Believer. They're out on tour supporting it. The thing to say about the Scorpions live is they're one of those bands where you're going to get high quality to the umpteenth degree. Like when you see Iron Maiden, when you see Rammstein. I mean, just when you see these bands that have been around for 25, 35, 40 years, putting on the level of shows that they put on is just beautiful. And Scorpions are one of those bands. They come out, and it's like, I have nothing negative to say about the Scorpions, but if I did have something negative to say, it would be that it's almost too, not choreographed, but too laid out. You know what I mean? In a way it is. But I mean, that's not a knock on them because bands do it. If you go see Iron Maiden, it's the same way. Everything's laid out. It's the same set every night. And you gotta, when you have a huge arena stage production, you have to have stuff choreographed for the lights, for the videos, to go with the songs and all that. But that's my only knock on the Scorpions is it's kind of like with the stuff, the banter that Klaus does in between the songs is likely the same at most shows. But again, at the end of the day, who cares? Most of us aren't going to most of the shows. We're going to one show, maybe two if we're lucky on a tour. So that's the reason that happens. It's not a complaint. I would say that's just the only, if there was one. But this band is so down to the nth degree. And they're not even the type of band that needs to be that way. Like I mentioned Dream Theater earlier, Iron Maiden. With Scorpions, they have a lot of intricate stuff, but I also, you feel like when you hear Scorpions, especially post-70s Scorpions, like 80s and on, you get that feeling like, this band could go out there and just be a rock party, just be stripped down, bare bones in a club, playing these tracks, and it would be just as cool as it was in a big arena show, like calculated the way it is. And, you know, to see, you know, just them barrel through was about an hour and a half, you know, typical for an older band, hour and a half, maybe hour 40. You know, they hit all the eras. They didn't do much from the 70s. I believe I should have this set list pulled up. I'm going to hit pause right now and pull this set list up. Okay, unpause. I found the set list. Here we go. So they had several new tracks, and that's another thing I thought was cool, is because a lot of bands, and you know, that have been around since the 70s or 80s, they put out a new album, and they might play like one track off it. I mean, a band like Iron Maiden is the exception, because they've always been about, hey, here's our new album. Here's half the album, plus 10 of our hits, which is great. The Scorpions, you know, have kind of done the same thing on this tour, and I'm sure they did on previous tours, but they opened the show with Gas in the Tank from the new album. And then they went straight into Make It Real. That's the opening track on what? Savage Amusement, I think. And then the Zoo, you know, which is my favorite Scorpion song of all time. And then they went into Coast to Coast, you know, that killer instrumental. Straight up laid it out there. That, you know, that might have been my favorite part of the show, was the Zoo and the Coast to Coast. But then they, you know, they played a couple more new songs, Seventh Son, Peacemaker. Then and I think later on they did Rock Believer, which is, you know, the title track from the newest album. But they had Bad Boys Running Wild, Delicate Dance. They had Blackout, Big City Nights, No One Like You, of course. The ending was Rock You Like a Hurricane, but they're in the middle. They did a 3-song set, all 3 in a row, from Crazy World, which was the album that got me into the Scorpions. That came out in 1990. You know, I was really getting into music around that time, 88. All the hard rock, heavy metal bands of the time, you know, and Scorpions, you know, whenever Tease Me, Please Me came out, massive on the radio, Wind of Change, of course, all that stuff. They did a moment there in the middle with Sin Be an Angel and Wind of Change and Tease Me, Please Me. Wind of Change, I mean, this was announced this, you know, earlier, and, you know, I guess when the tour first started, you know, the song, and I think he mentioned in an interview, because, you know, the opening lyrics to Wind of Change are about Russia. And he changed the lyrics to be about the Ukraine. And there was a lot of imagery on the screen. They had the peace sign with the Ukraine flag and everything. It was a beautiful moment with a beautiful song, you know, and the whole crowd, you know, was heavily into it the whole time. You know, Tulsa was pumped. It was you know, the arena that this was at, the BOK Center. I believe when there's a stage in there and it's not a full, you know, in the round situation, I think it holds like 18 to 20,000, if I'm not mistaken, 18. And I mean, this was kind of scattered a little bit on the upper deck, you know, but for the most part, the lower bowl and the floor was completely full. The upper deck was probably half full. So it was a good turnout, because this tour was originally like a co-headline deal with Whitesnake. Of course, Whitesnake had to cancel their entire tour, touring for the rest of the year, because of the health issues that David Coverdale is having. So hopefully that gets straightened out and we can still get Whitesnake out there on their final tour again. But I was glad to see that there was still a strong crowd, even though, you know, one of the 2 headlining bands were not there. But Scorpions, man, killed it. And then on top of all this, Mickey D. Holy fuck, dude. I've always loved this guy. And then I saw him, I believe, when Scorpions played Rocklahoma, that wasn't long after he had first been in the band. And you got to think about James Kotak had been the drummer for quite a while previous to that. I mean, that dude's obviously a great drummer. You have to be a great drummer to be in a band like this. But Mickey D is one of those guys that just takes things to another level. The way he hits, that's just one of the main reasons I loved him, is because you just feel like there's power. And that's the sense I got from this, is it was like everything, it's not like Scorpions. It's not like Matthias or, I say Matthias, it's Matthias, right? Matthias or Rudolph need help elevating what they're doing. But Mickey D just like brings so much power and bottom end to this thing that it just elevates it, in my opinion. And he did an excellent drum solo that was probably, I don't know how long it was, but it was somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes long. And, a lot of times, people would cheer for drum solos, but, a lot of people get up and run to the restroom or buy a beer or something. I didn't see people leaving at all during this, and like the whole crowd was into it just like it was a hit song. And it, there was a lot of course, video imagery behind him going along with it, and at the end of it, it had like a slot machine Vegas style thing going on, and the slots were spinning. And of course it was spinning up like your typical coins and, hearts and that kind of crap that would be on a slot machine. And then it started spinning and it had some Scorpions logos. And then it spun and they all hit, and it was all Lemmys across the board, which of course got a crowd reaction. So great to see that they're still letting Mikkey D represent the Motorhead era of his life. So, that was just excellent show all around. And I didn't mention the opening band. How could I not? Thunder Mother. So glad to finally see this band live as well. And I always appreciate whenever an opening band, again, in an arena, you're an opening band. A lot of times you get out there, you got a lot of empty seats because people are still coming in, that kind of thing. Sure, it wasn't completely full like it was for the Scorpions, but there was a strong crowd in there. The floor looked full. A lot of the lower bowl was full, so they had a strong crowd. And of course, being on an arena tour as an opening band, they had a small area of the stage to work with. Those four ladies, just like you get the sense when you hear the music or when you watch their videos, they brought it live, and it was beautiful. This is just one of those bare bones rock and roll bands that, I can't say enough good things about. I think one of the times we talked about them last year or the year before, Jason mentioned on this podcast, he said this is what American rock radio should be, is more bands like this and less bands like, I'm not going to mention who he mentioned, but you know what I'm saying, less of the bullshit that you do hear on the radio and more stuff like this where it's just bare bones, stripped down rock and roll. And just like the themes, it's like there's a real AC/DC vibe without sounding like AC/DC, if that makes sense. A lot of her guitar riffs, a lot of the opening guitar riffs, have an AC/DC vibe, but the music overall doesn't sound that way. I just mean where it's stripped down, bare bones, your three straight up drumming, Phil Rudd style drumming, and her, her vocals are off the charts. I just absolutely love this band. So glad to finally see them live. So check out Thunder Mother if you have not. All right. That felt kind of long-winded. But hey, you got to, I guess, if you're talking about shows. So, like I mentioned earlier, Blue Ridge Rock Fest in Rocklahoma. I have this plan, used to every year after Rocklahoma, Jason and I would do a review. But Jason didn't go this year. And of course, I was there, but I missed. I only saw a few things, so I can't really do a full-on review of the festival like I used to. But I have someone that has been to every single Rocklahoma, like myself, that I'm going to have on this podcast coming up soon. And I believe we're going to talk about just the past 15 years of Rocklahoma. And of course, we'll talk about this year's, so he'll be able to bring a little more insight than what I could do. I got to see Suicidal Tendencies full set. Hadn't seen them in a long time. So that was a highlight for me of recent live shows. I got to see some bits and pieces, I could see half of Megadeth. I saw the end of Shinedown. Saw a few other things, so. And then on top of all this, man, I'm just spitballing as I go. I saw Leonard Skinner recently because they headlined one of the nights at Born and Raised, which is another festival here in Oklahoma at the same site as Rocklahoma. And I'm going to save that and talk about that on the next episode. So be on the lookout for that. All right, Russell Allen. Man, this just reminded me when I said Russell Allen, I also saw Iron Maiden recently. God dang. Since I missed 2 weeks of episodes, I'm remembering all the stuff that I have not talked about. So I'm going to save Iron Maiden until next week as well, I guess. But I remember that because at the end of this interview, we're talking about Iron Maiden. But regardless, Russell Allen, like I mentioned up front, has a brand new album that just came out about 2 weeks ago with Annette Olsen, formerly of Nightwish. And he's been doing this project now for I guess it's 15, 16 years with Magnus Carlsen, where they did the previous albums with Jorn Lande, and now Annette is filling that role. So you're getting a totally different dynamic. Because the previous ones, you had two metal vocalists who, had different styles of singing, but still kind of fall into the same lane. But of course, now you've got a totally different lane. You've got female vocals, and she's got those huge soaring vocals that you know from Nightwish and everything else she's done. I mean, this album's if you like that operatic symphonic metal, this is excellent because it also has a bit more of a heaviness than a lot of that stuff has, because Magnus brings that in the songwriting, and of course Russell Allen brings it in his vocals. And this is the second album that they've done together, like Russell speaks about early on in this interview. This album features almost every song's a duet, which is very cool. So you need to check this one out. Great album. We've also got Symphony X coming out with new music here in the future. We're going to talk about all that. Before we jump into this, I need to let you know that the end of this interview just kind of ends abruptly. And it was my bad because we did this on Zoom, and I had not updated my Zoom to be able to, be endless time. So it has whatever the 40-minute cutoff time. And I just wasn't paying attention to the little ticker thing, and it just cut off. So I totally lost Russell. Went back in to see if I could get, but it didn't work, and we lost contact at that point. But anyway, it was a great interview. Got nearly 40 minutes here. So let's jump into this. Here is Russell Allen of Symphony X and Alan Olsen.
The record's being received really well. People like it. In this day and age, if you can put something out and people give a crap, then I guess we're doing something right.
Right. Yeah, so much content these days that it's hard to, a lot of stuff kind of slips through the cracks, it seems.
Yep. That's the truth. But it's cool. It's good to see so many artists and putting out music and being able to go see bands again is a great thing. So, it was real bad, obviously during the dark days of the pandemic there, when there was no shows and nothing,
Right.
So it's nice to be able to have an album out. And, I've been touring this year, so it's been great. And getting out again, it was a really cool thing, very inspiring. To see. I mean, we still had issues. We couldn't go to Europe and stuff with Symphony X. We had some issues there with some of the rules were all different in different countries, but at least here in the States and down in South America, we were able to pull it off. But just the energy of the crowds and stuff, not to get off topic, but just saying how great it was to tour, and see the fans and how happy they were to see us. It was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you end up having to cancel shows in Europe because of restrictions, or did everything?
Well, the problem was flying into the airports. If you would come from the States or whatever, someplace it was fine. But if you would come from like another country, then they would you could be singled out for testing, or they would have all these different things. Like you had to have. They kept changing the rules, like. If you had the vaccine, you were fine. But if you had to have, then one country wanted the boosters, then they didn't. Then they wanted more than just whatever. And we had situations where we couldn't, even if we wanted to comply with some of that, there was no time because you couldn't get the boosters within. You can't get them all at once if you need to. You have to wait. I think a good I don't know what it is, 3 weeks or something to get another one.
Yeah, I feel like it was a month or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we had, there was no way we could count on that, and so and be able to do those shows, because you lose one and the whole thing is shot, or God forbid somebody gets a positive thing, they put you in a hotel for 10 days at your expense. They quarantine you, and that's it, you're done. And we had crew and everyone flying. We just couldn't take that risk. We couldn't take that risk of that kind of a financial loss if God forbid something went wrong, or if they changed the rules while we were there. That's what we were worried about. And so it sucked. We had to say no. We had to not go, and so we didn't do any of the festivals this past summer. This summer with Symphony X, because of that, the uncertainty and the inconsistency of the rules changing. You know, if we had a bus, I think it would have been fine.
Yeah.
They weren't having any issues with you go, which makes no sense. But hey, look, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a government official. I'm just a singer in a rock and roll band. So whatever the rules are, we're gonna follow them. But they kept changing, and we couldn't keep up.
Yeah, it seemed to be the hardest part. The just inconsistency across the board, was never in, basically any area, whether it be music or anything.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're dealing, I can imagine when you're dealing with something so, dangerous and unpredictable, uh, you know, everyone's scrambling to try and do the right thing. But, sometimes, not everything goes the way you want. And maybe, for whatever the reasons are, there's liability. People don't want to be, holding the ones left holding the bag if something goes horribly wrong. Why didn't you restrict? This one. My family lost this one because of this, and there's all that going on. So it's more than just. There's just so much going on with that people don't realize that these people in charge have so much pressure on them. So I understand what they're trying to do, but in the end of the day, it's like hindsight's always 2020. We could always look back and say they should have done this, but you don't know what's going on at the time, especially when you just don't know how lethal something is, or whatever.
Right.
That's why I chose to be an entertainer, and not, not something else. Yeah,
Right.
I wouldn't want their job ever.
Right.
I coach football, and that's enough pressure.
Right.
Being the head coach of a little league football team, I couldn't imagine, and I got to deal with all the parents and everything. I just couldn't imagine,
Right.
Oh, not for me, boss. I'm happy just singing. So,
Well, from a personal standpoint, was it kind of a letdown to not be able to do 25th anniversary shows on the actual 25th anniversary?
of course,
Yeah.
but we were more concerned with just the health of the world, really. I mean,
Of course, yeah.
we were seeing so much so much sadness out there, and I think it wouldn't have been right for us to have been out there anyway at that time. It wasn't going to be much of a celebration if everyone's panicking and worrying about stuff. And so it was heartbreaking, to not be out there for that time at whatever. But hey, it's like a belated birthday, right?
Right.
As long as we at least got to go, and I'm so happy that everyone showed up, and they we honored the tickets that we sold, years ago, and people came, and more people came than I thought that they would. We had the best numbers in some of the markets ever, and yeah, in some places we normally don't really do well. It was great. I can't tell you how good the U.S. run went. It was awesome, and South America was great too. I know Europe will be awesome again. But I think it was more than just the 25-year thing. I think it was also a combination of the fact that the people were starving for entertainment, and I don't know. I'd like to think that people just wanted to see the band, but
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows? But it wasn't a bunch of old, crepity rockers from my decade, it was awesome. It was good to see a lot of younger people there, just a good diverse demographic of people who love metal and love rock and what we do, and progressive stuff, and it was inspiring to see that. So that was good.
Well, I'm going to come back to the Alan Olsen thing, but since we're on the subject of Symphony X and talking
Mhm.
about 25 years, like you guys have had the same lineup, for a good chunk of that since the late 90s. Like, what do you credit that
Yep.
to?
Not hanging out too much.
Right.
I don't know, but it's kind of true. We never really were a band. Hey, let's all go to the bar and get drunk together. That's just not who we are. We were never that type of group. So I think the fact that we all have very different lives, families and stuff, most of us now, and things like that. But when we come together, it's great. It's like, I just seen him yesterday, even if I hadn't seen him for a year or two or whatever. So I think there's something there that's like you could say credit, be a credit to our longevity as a group. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't always rosy. Obviously, you're going to have differences and stuff and opinions and things like that. But for the most part, we all respect each other very much, and I think that goes a long way. When we were younger, uh, we didn't have the classic explosions of ego. Sure, we had moments, but all in all, everybody knew that the other guy was just as important, and we needed each other. So that was established pretty early on. So I think, I think the fact that we were able to keep the respect for each other was a big deal, and that helped to keep us going. And that's why we didn't really have any massive explosions or blow-ups or anybody leaving the band. Of course, Jason had some health issues, and we had issues like that, and he left and he came back. But it wasn't because there was a fight or nobody wanted him in the band anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. So I think we were fortunate in that regard. And I think, yeah, I was kind of making a joke, but truthfully, we didn't exhaust each other's tolerance for each. So we weren't each other's tolerance for one another. We weren't up each other's asses 24/7. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the relationship didn't get stale. I think that is something that did help, because we all had our own social lives and friends and things like that outside of the group, and so the group wasn't just the only thing we had, to do. So when we finally came together, it was like a whole, seeing a whole new group of people again in a way. It's kind of a weird thing, but I think that did help to keep the band going, because we weren't around each other 24/7 like a lot of younger bands are, and then you get sick. That's when things, if you keep enough dynamite in the room together for long enough,
Yeah.
and it starts sweating, something's gonna blow. So
Right.
we never did that. So I think that helped. I think that really helped us.
I figured that was the answer because, I mean, you guys, you've got a lot of different projects going on, and you weren't always on that every 2-year album cycle like a lot of bands do. So that I figured that's what kind of made it
Yeah,
continue. Great,
there was no burnout.
Yeah.
That we never had the burnout thing, because of the gaps, and it always felt like, yeah, let's do a record, let's do the album now or whatever. Let's do this again. You get to missing it, you know what I mean? and just like the fans, missing it. So when we come back together, we want to be there. Fans want to be there because you yearn for it instead of like, the 2-year thing where you got to keep going and shove it down everybody's throat and force it because that's what the label wants or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
We never played that game. We did it our own way, and it's enabled us to stick around. I mean, it's not like we don't have records. We got what is it, 10 records, 9 records. I think this is the 10th one. So, when you slice it up between the 25 years, you're almost looking at an album every 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's not like the catalog isn't there. So it we could have put out more stuff, but I'm happy and proud of what we have done. I mean, honestly, we don't have to ever make another record again. We could do, tour after tour and play new material, not new, but different material from the catalog.
Yeah.
And I mean, even the last tour, we just touched on some of the bigger tracks from all the records, most all the records. And we didn't even, we could come back and play a whole new set and, play Divine Wings of Tragedy instead of the Odyssey for our big number and do, or, the long track and whatever. We didn't do the accolades. We didn't do so much the iconoclast stuff. We didn't do, that's what I mean. Like, but obviously, that's not something we want to do. We want to make new music. So that's what we're working on now. But yeah, I mean, if the band wants to play, I'm down.
What's the status on the next album?
Well, that's what we're doing now. We're just working on it now. Most of the music is there. Just trying to get the lyrics kind of going and short up and decide. I wonder whether or not we want to do like more of a whole concept thing like we normally do, or do something different. I think we're all kind of want to do something different. So that's what we're kind of hashing out as to where the direction of the record is, and because that's everything, in terms of like how the music's going to end up sounding, how the artwork's going to look,
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're going through now. It's changed a lot in the past year or two, and during the pandemic, no one really had anything to. Not that we didn't have anything. We had stuff that was there. Romeo's always working, but everyone was kind of bummed out, while other bands were like, we're going to make music now, because we were like, this sucks. People are dying. The world sucks. Economy sucks. And we were just sitting there going, we want to play. We're not the type of band that just to make a music and a video and sit home. If we make this stuff, we do want to go out and play the stuff. We see the albums as a vehicle for us to get out and perform shows, not the other way around, So that's kind of why we didn't really do much during the whole pandemic height of the lockdowns, because we couldn't follow it up with anything. If we'd have put an album out in the beginning of the pandemic and waited 2 years to tour, that just would have been horrible. So in our eyes, we just figured, let's ride this out. We went out without a record, and the tour was amazing, So, So now things seem to be better. Hopefully it holds, and whatever monkey pox or whatever the hell's coming next won't shut us all down again, and we can all enjoy new music from not just us, but all our favorite artists, and be able to go see them and be with other human beings, and
Right.
and enjoy the energy of a live concert. So fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed.
So 2023 is probably a good guess for an album coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Jumping back to the Army of Dreamers album. I mean, with this being the second album that you've done with Annette, how do you feel this progresses from Worlds Apart?
Well, the biggest change is that it's all duets, which I really like a lot. Matter of fact, I wish we'd done on the first one like that. I think we were, Magnus and the label and everyone, I don't know if really Magnus, but the label kind of went at the first one as a Alan Lundy thing,
Yeah.
like that sort of Russ will do some, and they'll do some, and then because they had so much success with that first pairing thing that we did. But I just it was good. Don't get me wrong, but this is just better. I think that because there's no feature, or I'm featured or she's featured. It's the two of us together, the whole record. It's really a true combination, of vocalists throughout. And the lyrics are better. I shouldn't say better than the last one. They're just there's better content because these two people, her and I, have something to interact with constantly. So there's like All Alone or things like that where you can sense that there's these people have lost each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's it's just a little more depth, and it's better to sort of feel what the singers are doing because there's an interaction there. On every song there's something there between the two of us, and I think it's just better. I think it's more interesting. I think it leads to better collaboration. So I like this record a lot because of that.
Well, when you guys decided to keep this project going, was the idea always to bring in a female dynamic, or was that something that just came up in the process of trying to figure out which way you're going to
go? It just kind of came up. I don't think it was a natural progression, or I shouldn't say that. It was just let's do it with the net. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. I like the idea immediately. So it wasn't like, oh, we're going to do this now. It just kind of happened.
Well, the song that jumped out to me pretty much was "Look at Me." I know that's a little more heavy on her vocals, but are there any tracks that really stand out to you personally?
Well, that's a great one. Yeah, "Look at Me" is good, really good. All Alone I like a lot. I mean, they all have something about them that is unique and cool. So, I never really say I have a favorite on anything I've ever done,
Yeah.
Because, my tastes change with like the wind sometimes, one day I'm like, this is really cool. And the next day, this turns out to be really good. So I don't know. I'm not really one for favorites, of my own material. To be quite honest with you, I don't really listen to my own stuff. I'll listen to it at the beginning to make sure I don't suck. When I'm recording it, because I never phone it in. I'm always like, okay, did I do this? Am I in the zone? Can I believe myself right now? And then I put it down, because when you're doing a project, like any music project for me, I just pour so much into it that when I'm done, it's like, okay, I gotta walk away from this. You know what I mean? Because then I'm on to the next thing. I gotta change modes. So I don't dwell too much on it. I make sure that I give everything I have in the moment, and then I move on. But and just let others decide what it is they like about it.
Well, with Magnus being kind of the main songwriter of this project, does he bring in fully formed ideas, or do you collaborate with him on that, or how's that process go?
It's fully realized. Pretty,
okay.
He sends me everything, and I'm free to change whatever I think. But honestly, it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's my mentality. Sometimes I'll change little things if grammatically he's got enunciations that aren't really working in the English language within the rhythm of the lines that he's put together. I'll address that. But the melodies are solid, and he really knows how to write for a singer. As the guitar players go, a lot of times you don't find that combo. In my experience, I play with great guitar players, and some can do it, and some just don't have that knack about them. He's one of those rare breeds that can actually understand that okay, I'm writing this as an accompaniment to a singer. These songs are about the vocals. He still puts some ripping solos in there. Don't get me wrong, but the structure of how the songs are put together for the singing parts is really geared towards that. You know, he's really working to the betterment of the song for the vocal presentation and the lyrics. So he's really good at that. So I it's really refreshing because there's nothing I really have to do but just produce my vocals, and that's all I have to do most of the time. Of course, the ad libs I can do stuff what I feel, or I'll add harmonies, or maybe that weren't there but I I guess I'm doing something right because I never get a complaint. So but for the most part, yeah, he gives fully formed ideas. They're very well thought out. They're very well put together. The lyrics are simple, but it's all about the how you perform them, how you say things. It's not what you say, it's how you say it sometimes, right?
Right.
So I work hard to make sure that the emotion is there, and so that the message is communicated as best I can do as a vocalist. And that's my job, and that's my goal within these projects is to make sure that I'm delivering to bring the music alive. And that's what I have to do. So that's what I do.
Well, as a vocalist, does it feel natural to sing lyrics that were written for you by someone else? I mean, I assume you guys have been working together for what, 17 plus years, so it's probably feels natural at this point, but
Yeah, it's no big thing for me. I enjoy it. I enjoy bringing someone else's work to life, just as much as I enjoy bringing my own to life. It's a different thing. Every time I've worked with somebody, I learn something new. Whether it's a new technique, whether it's just an emotional expression, or I just learned something new, even on the technical side. Yeah, I'm going to try this compressor this time, or I'm going to work with this mic on this song, because I like the way this is sounding for this track. You know, this song's giving. I need more air in the vocal here, or things like that. I just always enjoy the process of growing. So it's always a growth thing for me, and I bring all that back into what I do within my band or my own stuff. You know, and it's really enlightening to work with other artists uh, outside of your normal, sort of outside of your lane. I just been doing an acoustic project with some friends down in Brazil on Universal Music Group. It's just piano, guitar, vocal. And that's really fun because there's not, I'm not trying to wail over a stack of Marshalls.
yeah.
So there's the challenge is to, okay, well, you got to really be on point. You got to really emotionally be there. Every word, every note has to be there, because when you're kind of naked like that, the vocal is what is really moving you. So that's a really cool thing. Something I've enjoyed, and I'm probably going to do some more of that stuff because it just makes me a better singer. Even at this stage in the game, old dog can learn new tricks, right?
Right.
So, and I've my versatility has always been, obviously, people know that about me. The versatility I have, I'm not just this is the box, and Russell's a metal guy who screams all the time, or whatever, or he's this kind of guy, or so many of the dudes in the business that are great at what they do, they're just kind of locked into what they're good at, and that's fine. Go with what you got. I've always been able, luckily or fortunately, to really just sing just about anything, in terms of style. I can't hit the highest notes, like and stuff, but that was never my thing. I wasn't really into that kind of thing. I was always about the power of the song, and of course my influences being Dio and the blues rock guys like Paul Rogers and these type of guys. They were always more on the feel side of it, the soul side, it's kind of where I live. uh I can wail and hit some stuff, but always to serve the lyric, not to do some vocal acrobats. To I know some people love that. That's great, but for me, if the song requires it, I do my best to serve the song. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So every time I work with a new artist who's got a new song that I'm working on, it requires this type of approach, right? So that's fun for me. That challenges me to sing the song in a way that that translates, and people can, a singer can really change a song. I'm sure, obviously, as you realize, throughout the years, people will do covers, right, of other songs and totally change the energy of the song, and it's like a whole new song. So the voice is very unique in that regard. I think of the Sound of Silence that Disturbed did.
Right.
You know, think about, that's a prime example of taking a classic song that you've heard a million times by a folk legend, and transform it into this super powerful, dark and deep, rock version, I guess, of it. And that thing just exploded.
Yeah.
People it just was a huge success for them. Because David's voice, he brought this just sort of solemn, deep, delivery that was haunting, and it was great. I think of Johnny Cash, singing Trent Reznor's "Dirt"
Hurt.
or "Hurt."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a Johnny Cash song now.
Yeah. I think Reznor even said that in an interview once.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
I believe it. Yeah, I believe it. I mean, I can't hear that song without hearing him doing it now. And again, just so the voice is the voice is an identifier for sure, but another human being presenting their performance on a song is really powerful and because it's from them, so I just always keep that in mind, whenever I'm doing stuff. How can I make this my own, but still serve the song the best? And so that's always my goal. And again, Johnny Cash and David, they're not screaming their heads off, man.
Right.
I just feel like it's fun. Don't get me wrong; it's fun to sing that stuff. It's great, like an up tempo track, and you're getting everybody going, and you just kind of flexing your muscles, right? But those other types of deliveries can really emotionally move people, and I'm really into that. I want people to have a feeling, a reaction to what we're doing, on a deeper level, if it's possible to connect, because a lot of songs like that, they inspire us or they heal us as human beings, and I feel like if I'm doing that, if I'm touching people in that way, I'm using my voice in the right way, and I'm serving a greater purpose. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, kind of on the opposite end of the two songs you mentioned, I kind of felt that way whenever you guys, or when Adrenaline Mob put out Come Undone, just the guitar riff, your vocals, when Lizzie's vocals together, just I absolutely love the original version of that song, and you guys just kind of took it to another level.
Yeah. And of course, Lizzie's amazing. And yeah, I just that whole thing is a prime example of what we were talking about. And it's a shame that didn't get some more airplay, but Atlantic wanted to, she was in the middle of putting out something, so we had some issues there with cooperation with them. But that's just the business. But the art is there. People will always compliment us on that track. and it was great to work with her. And so, yeah, it was good cover, I guess you could say, because it was different from the original, right? In terms of how it was presented. We did a lot of covers in that band, but a lot of them were like just verbatim, like every time even if I hear on the radio or like the streaming thing, sometimes my neighbor like loves all the stuff I do. He'll be doing his yard work and all this great stuff's coming on and music, and I'm like, this is cool because at least I got a neighbor who loves metal, right, and rock. So
Right.
I'll be all of a sudden, like that Badlands tune we covered would come on, or not Badlands. It was Badlands or the Stand Up and Shout, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, cool, Dio's on, whatever, and then I start singing. I'm like, oh shit, that's me, like I don't. The band did so darn good to cover it that I can't tell if it's the original or the cover until it's I open my mouth and they're like, it's me. Not that I get bummed, but more like, I want to hear Dio right now.
Right.
I don't want to hear me.
Right.
But it's awesome though that the band that we were able to kind of, get it that close, But that doesn't necessarily, in my mind, make a great cover. It just proves that you can do it. But a great cover is a kind of a reimagining of it, like the Sound of Silence was, or the Come Undone that you mentioned.
Right.
And I've never really did covers before I got into Adrenaline Mob, and so that was another thing I liked about that whole adventure. One of the positives of that whole experience was to be able to have fun and do covers, do Heart, and that was cool too because you never really heard a guy sing that song too often. At least I haven't.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Final question for you, kind of a little off topic, but I know one of your favorite bands is Iron Maiden, and I'm going to see them live tomorrow night. What are your thoughts on the new album?
I got to be dead honest with you. I haven't listened to it yet.
Okay.
I'm a terrible Maiden fan right now. I got when did it come out?
It was earlier, at the beginning of this year, I think.
Yeah.
Man, what was? Or no, it was late last year.
Late last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not even. This whole whirlwind thing of what's been going on since the pandemic stopped. I did TSO, then I went to the Symphony X Spring Tour, and then the South American run, and then I'm right into football. Like this whole year's been a blur for me,
Right.
So yeah, I knew they had a record out. And I'm like, I'm gonna listen to it, and then I just haven't gotten around to it. So, but I'll check it out, man. I'd love to see him again. Then, it's been a long time, so I hope I'm sure you're gonna have a great time tonight. So I'll listen to it.
Yeah, I mean it's good, but it didn't hit me the same way Book of Souls did. So I mean, but to each their own, I guess. But
well, hey, that's the thing about music. What I like about what we do is that. I don't know if it's just the time that we put in between the albums. It's not really done on purpose, but one of the byproducts is that the expectations are when you put things out so close together. It seems like you can't really move forward as quickly as you'd like. When there's time and you can put something out, it's harder, I think, for people to measure it because they're just yearning to hear something new from you at that point. When you put things out so close together, if you try and take a new step somewhere, a lot of fans don't like it.
Right.
People like familiarity. People like to hear you do things you've always done.
Yeah.
There's a comfort there, but most artists hate that because they always feel like they need to grow, and I get that. I'm one of them, so I understand that. So, to put out, you don't know what they're thinking. Do we do this so we can go play a tour? Let's just bang some tracks out, or, I don't think that's the motivation. I think they're trying to do the best work that they can. It's just hard to measure up to things that you've done in the past. That especially with a band like that, you just got these legendary records, and it's really tough to meet those expectations. But you know, I'll always, like yourself, they'll always be my favorite metal band. And I don't know if you're your favorite, but I'm sure you like them a lot.
Yeah.
And they got a new album. I'm proud of them. That doesn't mean I'm gonna love it, but at least it gets them out on the road. Darn it! So
Absolutely.
that's what I think most fans thinking. And they know that. But you never know. Look, again, there's always a chance that something amazing could happen for these guys or any band that's the legacy act that could do something cool. Like we mentioned, Johnny Cash. I mean, look at that. Look at that stuff he did with at the end of his life.
Yeah.
I mean, we would all be so lucky or fortunate to be able to produce something of that magnitude at that stage in your life, in your career. That thing is probably. That whole thing is probably his best work.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd
at
agree.
at the end, I know it's just really hard to wrap your brain around for a lot of folks, but that man had something to say, and he said it, and amazing, and I'm so inspired by that, it keeps me going, If Johnny Cash can do that late, then I know I've got, as long as the good Lord lets me sing,
Yeah.
Then there's always something to look.
There you go, Russell Allen of Symphony X, Alan Olsen, Adrenaline Mob, Trans-Siberian Orchestra. A huge thank you to Russell for taking some time out there to talk to me. And of course, a huge thank you to John Freeman of Freeman Promotions for his help with that as well. Like I said earlier, kind of abruptly cut off there at the end because I was not paying attention to the 40-minute, cut off thing on Zoom. But, hey, we got some good stuff there from Russell. Hopefully we'll have him back again one day. Check out the new album from Alan Olsen that just came out and be looking forward to that new music from Symphony X coming down the line. All right. If this is your first time listening, I really appreciate it. You can check this out. And wherever you're listening now, hit subscribe or like so you don't miss future episodes. You can listen directly off the website, thethunderunderground.com, or most everywhere podcasts are heard, Spotify, Apple Music, all that great stuff, SoundCloud. 357 episodes previous to this one you can check out. I mentioned earlier Glenn Hughes has been on here before. Gene Simmons has been on here. Dizzy Reed of Guns N' Roses. Vivian Campbell of Def Leppard. Dee Snider of Twisted Sister. Paige Hamilton of Helmet has been on here a couple of times. Members of COC, Typo Negative, Prong, Tesla, Great White. A huge-ass long list that just spans all different genres. So check it all out and be looking for new episodes from RJ Hell of Hellstorm, Kenneth Bryan, and other great stuff coming your way. All right, once again, a huge thank you to DB Concerts, Med Farm, Sunset Tattoo, Freeman Promotions, and of course Russell Allen. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.